All right, now we're going to look at understanding what a life group looks like. Is the meeting stupid? And what I mean by that, if a meeting is good, then a life group is going to be fruitful. Nothing is less appealing if the life group isn't good based upon the meetings that they have. In the States, we have this saying called a home run in baseball. Every meeting does not need to be a home run. In basketball terms, every shot does not need to be a three-point shot. It is okay to make some layups every now and then. So you don't have to have a home run. So a good life group is what you want. It doesn't have to be great every single week, but you want to avoid it being bad. Because if it's bad and there's no real discussion and there's no meat involved and it just kind of keeps going on this, well, we're just meeting and we're not doing anything, I think you'll find that there's going to be a lot of negatives and a lot of small groups may die out that way. We must have vision each week. Pray, make notes, hand the meeting over to God, set it up to have things ready. Prepare the host family and prepare for the meeting. So you want the host to be ready to go, but you also want to have enough prepared each week that there's something for everybody. And a lot of times, like I said, for the 30-30 plan, you want to think about this ahead of time and come prepared with a sheet or some notes that you can talk about. There's 4 things I think will allow a life group to be successful from the perspective of a leader. 1, have a welcome and an icebreaker. I think everyone loves an icebreaker, a small game, a topic that's funny or fun to talk about, maybe a song everybody likes, something to kind of break the ice to get people talking, get people relaxed. The second thing is to have Bible discussion. This is where you can talk about the actual lesson or the sermon on Sunday morning, or you could just bring up another Bible passage, have everybody read it, and just discuss what the passage was actually talking about. The third thing is going to be personal application. This should take the most time, and it's really like, why do we care about this passage? Okay, so we understand the Lord's Supper. We read about it. We talked about what it was like back then. But why do we care about the Lord's Supper today? Well, that's a good example because we need to be remembering certain things during the Lord's Supper. So there's a way for us to apply that to have application in our lives. But it's tough if you don't understand the scriptures, which is why we have this format. I think the 4th point is outreach time. It's a time dedicated to thinking about ways to invite people, to pray over that empty chair, and to be purposeful about evangelizing and increasing the numbers of your small group. So here's my flow of a good lesson I'd like to share with you. First off, you need to understand, what is my application point? This is something you feel, this is something you do, something you believe, something you want the group to understand. Okay, do I want the group to feel loved tonight? That is your application point. Do I want my group to understand this particular passage and how to apply it? That's your application point. So figure out what that is, and then you'll be able to go from there. I think the best setup is to have an open, dig, and reflect part of your lesson. Now, usually 10 minutes is dedicated to an icebreaker. That's a round number that works out very well. 20 minutes could be designed to digging into the scripture, maybe looking at other passages that support that scripture. And 30 minutes needs to be this idea of reflect. So open, dig, reflect. For the icebreaker, get people talking. Are you a morning person or a night person? This is an easy question that everybody can answer relatively quickly, and it helps develop that conversation. So what's your favorite Bible story? Or who do you think had the greatest faith in the scriptures? What is your phobias? What's the farthest you've ever traveled? Who's your favorite sports icon? Remember, it doesn't have to be something hard, but it needs to be something where each member in the group can answer and start feeling comfortable with the dialogue. Dig. Dig is just a deeper understanding of the Bible or the passage that you're looking into, or the topic that you're looking into. So, for an example, you're reading in the New Testament about Jesus healing the sick. Digging would be saying something like, what were the apostles thinking while Jesus was healing the sick? Or what would you do in this situation if you lived back in that time? So this is a way to develop conversation as well, because you're kind of digging further into the word and understanding the culture of that time as well, or asking about what the culture was like. Another example is, what did the Apostle Paul mean when he said, I have become all things to all people so that I might save some? Right? What did Paul mean by that? And you can read the scriptures and kind of dig a little bit further into that passage or similar passages. Don't spend too much time here. You just want to get a reflection of the scriptures and understand the passage a little bit more, but don't get too deep. I think some problems come when you spend all of your small group time just on digging. So remember, it's just to kind of develop a little bit more knowledge of the passage, but you don't want to spend all of your time. Reflect is really where you want to park. That's where you want to spend the majority of the time. This is the application part of the lesson, where people can kind of go home with, I learned something about this I can apply to my life. So remember the application point. How can we do this during the reflect period? This isn't just something I've made up. This has been proven over many, many life groups, and it works. Think about this question. Have you allowed Jesus to heal your broken spirit? Or have you relied on Jesus to help you when you're sick? Right? So we're learning about how Jesus healed the sick. But now the application part is, how has Jesus healed you when you're sick? Do you have faith to rely on him when you're sick? These are tough questions. And these are questions that prick the heart and really, really allow people to open up about their faith or their struggles in their faith. How about this one? Have you felt like one of the apostles in their lack of faith in this passage? Or maybe this one. Have you done something recently to show others you care for them? Or what we can do tomorrow to become all things like Paul did in this passage? Right? These are meaningful, deep questions that you can now open and discuss with the group. You want to make a lesson challenging. You want a heavy-hitting application point instead of just a light, encouraging lesson. Now, there are times for a light, encouraging lesson. I think everyone needs that. But remember what the life group is for. It's to impact people's lives for the better and to love them for that. So allow people to open up. If they start talking about their problems, that's good. If they start sharing about some of their deepest issues or sharing some stories that are very beneficial to other people and encouraging, that's good. You want that. Spend your time in the reflect portion of your life group meeting. A tool that you can use to help with this open, dig, reflect theme during your life group is called a Serendipity Bible. And this is something you can get at religious stores. You really, if you are a small group leader, you really need to have access to this or be able to borrow it from the congregation that you're attending, or just buy one. I know if I can, personally, I would love to help a lot of Filipino congregations to have access to the Serendipity Bible. So if you were to open up this Bible, the entire Bible is depicted in here, and next to the themes of different chapters in the Bible has the exact open, dig, reflect of each passage. So, for example, 1 Timothy chapter 5 talks about advice for widows, elders, and slaves. So you could read chapter 5, and then on the left side here are the open, dig, and reflect questions that you can ask your life group. So open. When you were growing up, what proverb best described the way your family used money? Waste not, want not. So it has a number of different questions here just to kind of get the group talking. Then it has a little dig portion here. From what from what you read between the lines, what was the problem concerning widows in this church? This just is open discussion, allowing people to talk. And then it has a reflect. How many widows are there in your extended family? Wow. So this is something where once people answer, you get to know them better. And you can start seeing some of the relationships deepen a little bit based upon your knowledge of their answers. When, if ever, have you suddenly become single? What was that time like? And then obviously it kind of gets a little bit deeper here. Of the various instructions in chapter 5, which one has your name on it and why? So of the entire chapter, what stuck out to you for an application purpose and why? So that's a little bit deeper question that you're intending to get through at the end of the lesson. So you're trying to talk to help people be involved more so that when you come to those deep questions, they're comfortable with talking about their problems. Some leaders of groups fail a little bit in my experience because they're afraid to ask the big questions at the end. The reflection questions of what are some problems you have in your life, and then ask them that. Just kind of step back and be quiet and see if they answer. That's tough. It takes some getting used to, and you have to really be brave in asking some of these questions. Don't say something like, I hope you all study the Bible this week. God bless you. That's kind of open-ended. That's not very deep. That's not instigating some learning and some struggling and some challenges. Instead, how are you going to study the Bible more this week and deepen your faith? That's pretty deep. It's directed. It's pointed. It's tangible, and they can go home with something that they talked about and how to improve their daily Bible study. Let them be the ones to talk. Be sure it's not just the group leader just sharing. You want to make sure that you ask a question that's deep. Wait. Let them answer. When they answer and they open up, that's when you've hit your three-pointer instead of just your layups. But not all group sessions are going to be layups or three-pointers. It just goes differing from night to night based upon the issues and what people have to talk about. Sometimes people don't have any issues or strong feelings to share, and that's okay. But you want to give that opportunity for someone to talk if there is something there. This is just a guide, right? It's a tool for you to use. Don't feel like you have to read every question. You have to talk about everything that talks about. Or if you kind of prepared a sheet, don't just think that you have to get through everything. You may not have the time to get through everything. You might want to omit several questions that you had thought you were going to ask and just get down to the deeper rooted issues and be flexible. Be flexible like that. When people start to get things off their chest, it can go a number of different ways, but it's important for them to do that. So be ready, be prepared, but also be willing to kind of go off script and adjust the small group as a leader if you need to, as much as needed. And remember, this is a place where you want people opening it up to each other and caring for each other. In the link, I provided some attachments that you can actually practice this. It's some of my old lessons that I've used where I've had some opening questions. I've had a passage that you can kind of dig into, and then I've had some reflection questions that I went around and asked each person and allowed them to respond. You don't have to force people to talk, but you want to allow them to respond with different issues that they have in their lives. So this is something that you can practice on your own. Find a passage in the Bible. Find some questions to ask about it. Try to think of things that are purposeful for your specific group. Then have at it. Use the resources available to you. Use some of my examples, but make it your own. And I think that that's important, that you're not overwhelmed with having to do things a certain way. Make it your own. Make it something that you enjoy doing. And you'll find that you'll be relaxed, You'll be able to encourage others, and other people will be more willing to open up if it's not necessarily forced or a script. Your money in a small group is the specific reflection questions. So do not overlook this step or neglect this step. You don't just want to say, Jesus healed the sick this time, this time, this time. He healed the man with leprosy. He healed the paralytic. And I hope everyone has learned from these Bible verses and has been encouraged. Right? That's not that reflective. Be very purposeful with your questions to invoke good discussion and allow people to open up. When has Jesus affected a time that you were sick? And how was your faith during that sickness? Wow, well, Brother June, I had this one time I was sick and I wasn't feeling good at all, and I had all these temptations come up. My parents were stressing me out based upon how worried they were when I was sick, and I wasn't able to be faithful with God. I didn't attend church, and I realize now that that's definitely something in my life I need to improve on, to rely on God and His providence even when I'm sick and when I'm weak. Could you guys pray for me to help me become better in this area of my life where I struggle with being sick and having faith with God? This is a very, very simple question, but it allowed people to open up. So be purposeful with your open questions so that you can reflect in a way that matters to your group. Okay, as a life group leader, there are some do's and don'ts a leader must adhere to. Number one, do know their names. I think it's silly to be in a small group of 6-10 people and sister, what was your name again? It can be embarrassing, and I think it goes without saying. Know who is in your small group. Know their names. If you need to, write them down so that when you're looking at different people, you can remember who they are and you have that personal connection. Do have something planned for the children. There are bound to be children in a small group, and you don't necessarily want the adults to be distracted the entire time. So if you have something planned for the children, maybe one member kind of ready for a children's class or a get together or something that they can do, I think that's great because you're able to kind of open up a little bit more with the adults. Do laugh. Have a good time at your small groups. I think it's obvious when someone is nervous or they feel forced into a small group atmosphere, but you can do a lot of good by authentically enjoying the small group. So don't forget to laugh. Make sure to keep a good timekeeping plan. If you let a meeting go on and on and on, and you're not necessarily thoughtful or purposeful with the time, it can be discouraging to a lot of people that may have different places to go. So know your group and know how to kind of adjust time and say, okay, I've enjoyed people talking. Let's take 5 more minutes to finish up our discussion if need be. So I think it's purposeful to use your time wisely than just have people talk about whatever they want to talk about. As a leader, thank people for their comments. You want to give good positive feedback to people so that they can then feel good about talking and want to talk more. If Sister Susan says something that's very meaningful to her and you just say something like, well, I think we all knew that anyway. Anybody else have something to say? Well, that can be a little bit discouraging and they may not want to speak up. So remember, it's good to always have a compliment for those who respond and you want to encourage others that way. All right, some don'ts. Don't number 1, don't lecture as a life group leader. You don't want to be the one talking the whole time. You don't want to dictate what everybody's supposed to read. It's not a lectureship, it's a discussion. So don't lecture. Don't put people on the spot. And what I mean by this is sometimes people have a tendency to be shy, even more so when they have the spotlight on them and they feel pressured. So you don't want to say, okay, let's all talk about the Ten Commandments. Sister Susan, what do you think about the Ten Commandments? Well, that kind of puts them on the spot, and they may not like that, and they may not respond well. Don't force people to talk. Remember, you want to provide opportunities for them to talk, but we don't want to force anybody to talk. This may discourage them from coming again if they feel embarrassed or forced in any way. Another don't is not to let other people talk too much. Remember, we want the group to talk. We don't want one or two people in the group to talk the whole time. So have a strategy for this. Maybe talk to the person who naturally talks a lot. Talk to them beforehand and say, hey, Brother Billy, I understand your strength is to talk and to share a lot, but I really would like your help to allow other people to talk. Is that something you can help me out with tonight? And you'll see that a lot of people do want to include others as well instead of just talking too much. Don't feel pressure to follow the plan exactly or only. You may need to deviate a little bit for good reason, and that's okay. So have a plan ready, but don't feel like you're handcuffed to only talking about what's on that piece of paper or what's on that plan. Have some flexibility and see where the group wants to go. If they want to talk about something else or something different and it's good and it's important, that might be where you need to camp for that evening.